Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack one of history's most incredible stories, how a private company, a group of merchants, didn't just trade with India. No, they laid the groundwork to actually rule it.
I mean, seriously, how does a company become a conqueror? It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, right? But this isn't fiction. This really happened. A regular corporation, with shareholders and a bottom line, somehow ended up with its own army, its own territory, and ruled over millions of people. So, how on earth did that happen? Let's get into it.
So, here's the path we're going to follow, and it's pretty wild. In just over 100 years, the East India Company goes from basically a startup with a royal seal of approval to holding this so-called Magna Carta that gave them almost unchecked power in India. It's an incredible transformation.
All right, so let's set the scene. We're talking about the late 1500s. England is feeling pretty good about itself after beating the Spanish Armada. And they're looking around, seeing their rivals getting fabulously wealthy from trade with the East, and they want in. They want a piece of that action.
So, picture this. It's the very last day of the year 1600, New Year's Eve, basically, and Queen Elizabeth I signs a piece of paper, a royal charter, for a group of guys calling themselves the Merchant Adventurers. And just like that, with the stroke of a pen, the East India Company, or the EIC as we'll call it, is born. So what exactly was this royal charter? Well, you gotta understand, it was way more than just a permission slip to trade. It was an exclusive, all-access pass. It gave the EIC a total monopoly. No other English company could even try to compete with them. And get this, the Queen herself was a shareholder. She had skin in the game. The company's profits were tied to the crown right from the very beginning.
Okay, so the EIC has its charter, and they're ready to go. They set their sights on India. But, just showing up wasn't enough. Trying to get a foothold in the massive, powerful Mughal Empire? Yeah, that turned out to be a lot trickier than they thought. At first, they tried playing nice. They sent a guy, Captain Hawkins, to the court of the Mughal Emperor Jahangir, and he basically acted like a humble petitioner. "Please, sir, can we trade?" And it almost worked. But their rivals, the Portuguese, were already there, and they had the emperor's ear. They whispered a few things, and boom, Hawkins got kicked out. That's when the EIC realized, okay, just asking nicely is not going to work here.
And this is where everything changes. If diplomacy wasn't going to work, maybe a little muscle would. In 1612, they took on a Portuguese fleet right near Surat, and they won. Decisively. This show of force, this proof of English naval power, impressed the Mughals in a way that begging never could. And just like that, the door was open. They got permission for their first permanent factory in Surat the very next year.
But hey, one factory? That was just the beginning. The company was thinking bigger. So in 1615, they sent in the big guns, a real ambassador named Sir Thomas Roe. And this guy, he was a masterstroke. He didn't just ask for a little more, he secured something called an imperial farman. Think of it as an official decree from the emperor himself, giving the EIC the right to trade and build factories, well, pretty much anywhere they wanted across the entire empire. This was an absolutely massive win.
So now they have this imperial green light, and this is crucial. The EIC doesn't just set up a few warehouses. No, they start building a real, physical presence. They create these fortified hubs of power, and these forts and factories, they're going to become the pillars of their future empire. Let's look at the first pillar, Madras, down in the south. The Mughal influence was a bit weaker there, so they cut a deal with a local ruler and built Fort St. George. And this wasn't just a trading post. They got permission to build walls, to administer the area, and even to coin their own money. Think about that. That's not just business. That's basically acting like a mini government.
All right, now get ready for what has to be one of the greatest real estate deals of all time. The island of Bombay. It was actually part of a wedding present to the King of England, Charles II. He didn't really know what to do with it, so he just rented it out to the EIC. The price? A measly £10 a year. I'm not kidding.
And what a deal it was. Bombay had this incredible natural harbor, making it a perfect spot for a port. It quickly became the EIC's main hub on the west coast, replacing Surat. It was just a much better, more strategic location for their growing network.
And to complete the picture, we go to the east. Here, the company bought up 3 little villages, built a fort they called Fort William, and that settlement eventually grew into the huge city of Calcutta. So now you see it, right? Madras in the south, Bombay in the west, and Calcutta in the east. They've created this powerful strategic triangle that basically gives them control of India's entire coastline.
Okay, so by this point, the EIC is feeling pretty strong. They've got these 3 major fortified cities. And you know what happens when you get a little too confident? You make mistakes. They got a bit full of themselves, which led to this moment of total hubris. A huge blunder, actually. But, weirdly enough, right after that disaster came their biggest win yet. So what did they do? In 1686, they thought they were strong enough to declare war on the Mughal emperor himself. I mean, talk about overplaying your hand. It was a complete disaster. The Mughals absolutely crushed them, took all their stuff, and kicked them out. The English had to come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. It was a very painful but very important lesson. They were not invincible. Not yet, anyway. But here's the crazy part. After being forgiven, the EIC somehow managed to walk away with an unbelievable deal. They agreed to pay a flat fee, just 3,000 rupees a year, and in return, they got to trade in this super-rich region of Bengal completely tax-free. An amazing comeback.
And all of this leads up to the year 1717. A new emperor is on the throne, Farrukhsiyar, and he issues a series of decrees, a set of farmans that were so powerful, so game-changing for the company, that they've gone down in history as the company's Magna Carta.
Just look at this. The deal was ridiculously good for the company. I mean, for what were basically tiny annual fees, they got these huge financial advantages in the wealthiest parts of India. This wasn't just a good deal, it was a golden ticket. It gave them an unbeatable edge over every other trader out there, whether they were Indian or European.
So with this incredible economic power now locked in, and with their main rivals neutralized, the East India Company had transformed. It wasn't just a business anymore. For all intents and purposes, it had become its own little state, operating inside another state. The stage was now set for the next, much bigger step.
And speaking of rivals, they were pretty clever about how they handled the other European powers. Take the Dutch, for example. They eventually worked out a sort of you take this, we'll take that deal. The Dutch agreed to focus on the super lucrative Spice Islands in Indonesia, and in return, they'd leave India to the English. A classic divide and conquer strategy.
So, let's just recap where we are. By the early 1700s, all the pieces are on the board. The EIC has its 3 fortified super cities, they have their unbeatable economic advantages, they control the sea lanes. These weren't just trading posts anymore. They were launch pads. Launch pads for an empire just waiting for the right moment, like the weakening of Mughal power, to make their move. Think about it. They started as a group of merchants just looking to make a profit. They ended up as a political and military powers seeking to rule. They completely blurred that line between being a corporation and being a state. And while this all happened centuries ago, it definitely leaves you with a pretty big question to think about for our world today.